Hello, I am Julie Meyerowitz of HearMyWordsAutism.com, and I am an autism coach for parents of children on the autism spectrum and for independent adults on the autism spectrum. And I am here today with Talie to talk about anxiety. Talie,
Hi.
hi, can you tell us more about yourself?
Hi, so I'm Talie Warulkar and I'm an anxiety coach. I specialize in anxiety in women specifically.
Specifically. So we've had several conversations about this, but I start every interview asking the person that I'm interviewing what their relationship to autism is and what the definition of autism is. So Tali, what is your relationship to autism?
So my relationship to autism is, I'm going to be honest, I don't have one. We don't have anyone in our family that has autism. Um, and I don't know much about it, but I am very happy and ready to be educated.
It's gonna be fun. And,
I have to be honest. Yeah, go on.
and do you have a definition of autism that you
I
feel?
do not.
Okay,
I do
great.
not have a definition. Yeah.
When I first reached out to you about doing these interviews, that was what you said. You're like, I thank you for contacting me, but why? So what my response was is that I see that this is a big that anxiety, like that if you are knowledgeable of it about anxiety and how to help anxiety, then you have something to share.
It's very, very like anxiety is everywhere at the moment, especially in the last 2 years since
Right,
Corona started.
right.
It's been on an absolute massive, massive increase, especially in children,
Especially
especially in children.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Sense.
I've had a lot of people reach out to me about their children.
Right, right. And even
Because,
before the
yeah,
pandemic, this was a big issue for
yeah,
everybody living with autism in some way, whether it was the individual with autism or the parents or even the professionals
yeah,
that are working in this realm. So you had this great idea. It makes sense
yeah,
that you don't have a definition of autism that you are confident with,
no,
right? So you had this great idea, which makes sense.
mm,
That you it makes sense to define anxiety. So for this
yeah,
interview, so how would you define anxiety? So one of the things, the reason, like I was like what we've talked about in planning for this interview, the reason that I ask everybody to share their relationship to autism and their definition of autism for the discussion that I'm leading, which is around autism, is my experience previously as a speech therapist and currently as an RDI consultant or like an autism coach, is I see so often that people are coming to the table, sometimes literally a table these days, more often a Zoom meeting, um,
virtual table.
um, in order to work together to make things better for folks on the autism spectrum, but
Yeah.
with a lot of different understanding about what they've come for and what they've come to address. And so often people are using the same words to talk about different things or different words to talk about the same things. And a lot of
Mm.
conflict
There's a
arises,
lot of confusion and
there's a lot of
conflict.
confusion around
Yeah.
autism. There's a lot of confusion around autism, even amongst professionals, and a lot of disagreement even amongst professionals and folks who are thought of as experts. So I one the other reason that I ask is
Yeah.
I would like to keep my definition and understanding of autism open and evolving.
Okay.
And also, I want to understand, especially when I'm working with an individual or a family, what their understanding is of autism, because that's relevant. Like that's what they've come to me to address. Um, I
I can imagine by defining your terminology, you know what you're dealing with much more.
definitely, it's
Yeah.
hard to find. So I've heard over the years lots of definitions of autism, most of them focusing on symptoms or behaviors.
Okay.
And that I find less helpful. And in a lot of ways, that it makes things more difficult to address because the symptoms and behaviors vary from person to person and also be many and varied within one individual. What
Do you have like let's
I
say
was
an
about to
umbrella definition,
I
like a
was about
general?
I was about to
Yeah.
say. What I have found more helpful, the most helpful definition that I found in terms of helping me to understand, particularly in a way, to understand in a way that I can help, is the
Mhm.
definition that's provided by RDI, which is Relationship
Okay.
Development Intervention, which is my specialized training that's that that I draw from heavily in my autism coaching. It's not the only thing that I use, but I do use a lot of their ideas and concepts.
Yeah.
And it's basically thinking of, it's kind of like a multiple intelligences way of thinking of things, um,
Okay.
but focusing specifically on two types of intelligence. One being static intelligence,
Mm.
basically understanding of patterns and rules
Yeah.
and like facts, and another being dynamic intelligence, which is more the understanding of relationships and the ability to kind of flow with the unexpected, and to draw from past either personal or observed experience in order to meet whatever's coming in the current moment. And RDI's understanding of autism, um, particularly if you're thinking about it as something that's challenging, is that it becomes challenging when you're so much stronger in static intelligence than in dynamic intelligence,
Okay.
to the point, or you struggle with it, dynamic intelligence, when dealing with dynamic situations,
Mm.
which is
Okay.
dealing with the
Yeah.
unexpected, dealing with unexpected transition,
Yeah.
dealing with things that don't fit the rules. Um, and so that definition I have found more helpful in enabling me to help people.
Good. It's
Okay.
educated me. I would have never like thank you. Thank you.
It's not something that I've seen anywhere really outside of RDI so much. Like, and so it's often like a surprising definition for a lot of people. Um,
Good. I think it is very, very important to define our terminologies. As I said before, like if you wanna help yourself, defining your terminologies can make such a difference. It really can, because it brings clarity and it brings help.
right.
You can
And the
help
other
yourself
thing
a
is
lot.
finding help
Finding
and
help.
finding the help that you need. You want to
Yes.
be finding somebody who addresses or
Hmm.
understands what you're struggling with
Yeah.
in a way that resonates with you. So
Yes.
if somebody
Like a
is
shidduch. I always find it's like a shidduch.
right, right. I mean,
It's
that's,
like a shidduch. Yeah.
yeah, like if
Yeah.
somebody is coming to me um, to control their child's behavior,
Yes.
um, I might not be the right person because that's not my understanding of what's going on, of the root of it.
Right.
Um, and there are plenty of people who do that, like, or um, yeah. But if they want to sort of like get more like an underlying dynamic versus
Yeah.
static, um, that I'm more likely to be the person to help.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
How do you
One.
understand anxiety?
Okay, so how I would define anxiety is okay, the unpleasant fear that anxiety builds up in your head of a future event that is unlikely to occur. That
Ah,
is the definition of anxiety. That's how I would define anxiety. It's when you're not really particularly doing anything, and suddenly you start like this movie reel starts working in your head of like, what if, 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 and then like you go to this event, and then it becomes like a slippery slope. That movie that we play in our heads, and it's like unpleasant, but we use our rationale mind, the likelihood of that event ever happening is so minimal. But anxiety is not rational. That's the thing.
So,
Anxiety is not rational.
so I actually have a question. What if it's a fear that of something reoccurring that has occurred frequently?
So then that's a fear.
Okay. Because I think a lot of folks on the spectrum are, or parents are are
It's a
are,
fear.
are
That's a
fearing.
fear.
Yeah.
It's when we come to anxiety, anxiety has actually physical symptoms. Um, you could feel sweaty palms, a very common one. The feeling of you've got like a rope around your neck and you're choking. Symptoms can include your mind is like racing, and you feel like you're running a marathon. Um, Stomach pains, any physical body pains that's been unexplained, not something that like you've gone to a doctor and he's diagnosed it. I'm talking about like if you can't necessarily explain it. Not always, it's not always the case, but very often it could be a case that like if someone has a pain in their body and it's like unexplained, it could be a physical manifestation of something emotional going on. I know for myself that when my anxiety is extremely high, I get stomach pains,
Mhm.
which is very common. A lot of people get either like they tend, like like people say they carry stress over here. Anxiety can be very often in the stomach or in the throat. It's very common. Um, Things like that. That's
I
yeah,
think that
it's
can
ways that we
happen
can
with
show up.
these
Yeah,
symptoms can also happen with what you're calling fear, with like that when you're
right,
anticipating something that has happened frequently before.
right. So anxiety is when your brain is living in the future.
Okay.
Fear is something of a past event. So the thing with anxiety, it's very future focused. And the best way to deal with anxiety is by bringing yourself into the present.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about that. We have
Yes.
lots of things that you've covered.
Lots of things I specifically
Yes,
wanted to.
I'm very
Okay. So I want to start with a topic: 3 ways in which to prevent being triggered
yes.
from anxiety. Okay. Now, as exactly what we were just discussing, okay, the number one is you have to know your triggers. That is the number one. You can't prevent something if you can't identify what it is. So I've got a list actually in front of me. I'm just going to read it off. These are areas that anxiety can potentially show up. It's not, there are other things that you can add to the list as well. Okay, these are just potential areas. The first one is food. People can have anxiety surrounding food. Places, people, certain situations, certain events, health issues or health and medical issues. I've come across that very often, and corona is definitely something that's exasperated that. I've seen that in my clients. Um, People that never had any medical anxiety before, suddenly they're like anxious just to like go out or to go to a doctor to get the vaccination, you know.
Mhm.
Anxiety from medication. There's certain medications, by the way, that can also trigger anxiety. Make sure you always read the leaflet that comes in the package. Certain smells, certain sounds can potentially be anxiety triggers as well. Um,
What you're describing
okay,
now is very
yeah,
relevant for autism because a lot of times they're like sensory triggers.
there you go.
Yeah.
In what way?
So I
Okay, do
think
you want
my understanding, and I'm always going to say my understanding because it's always evolving. I don't
to,
know
of
that I could
course.
share a fact per se of somebody else's experience, but um, and this is something that I relate to about autism because I also have a lot of sensory stuff myself.
Yeah,
Is that a lot of what's going on with autism for a lot of folks? What's happening
yeah,
with autism is that the way their senses, folks on the spectrum, are processing the world are very different from what's going on in the general population. So a lot of
yeah,
times they're like people responding to somebody, like what they're seeing a reaction with somebody on the spectrum doing, they're like, they did that for no reason. they behaved that way for no reason. That's like what an observer will often say, because there was nothing that they noticed would be a trigger
From their own
from their
observation.
from
Yeah.
the way that their senses are taken.
Yeah.
However, the person on the spectrum might be like highly sensitive to texture or temperature or light or sound. That there's
So you're
something
saying they can all be actual anxiety triggers as well?
that it it
Or potential, let's call it
especially
potential.
because like, or if they enter an environment in which they were highly triggered by like a smell or some sense previously, it could
Yeah.
create a trigger. Yeah.
Julia, you brought up a really important point. From what I understand is that um, everybody's reality is very, very different. How the way you see the world is different to how somebody else will see the world. And it sounds to me like somebody who's on the spectrum, somebody with autism, sees the world even from another complete angle. So, like, if they acted in a certain way to somebody like you and I, we're like, okay, that was completely out of context. But from their reality,
Yes. Yes.
it makes total sense.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, by the way, this is, I just want to add in this specific point is that this is what anxiety does. Sometimes people act in a certain way that for me, it might be like, okay, but for them, you don't know what's going on in their heads.
Right.
You know, I once had a client and she had anxiety over driving. She had anxiety, complete anxiety over driving. And now for me, when I first came here 12 years ago, speaking over it was such an anxiety trigger. It was a massive anxiety trigger. Now it's not an issue for me, you know, but driving was never an issue for me. I never had anxiety over driving. So for something like anxiety, it shows up differently in different people.
Speaking Hebrew is still an anxiety trigger for me. I see
There
like
you go.
I've
There you go.
since the summer. It hasn't been like it's
Yeah.
been about half a year. So
Yes.
my husband, who's Hebrew, is like he's been learning Hebrew since he was a child. He's a rabbi. He was working in the Judaica section at Library of Congress. The phone
There you
rings.
go.
I see an Israeli number. I pass him the phone.
There you go.
That can't go on
So
forever. Eventually, I have to learn the language of the country.
So this is what I wanted to say is that like it's very, very important to know what your anxiety triggers are or how each of these that I've just listed above, how they contribute to your anxiety. Okay, so I just gave the example of somebody, she used to get triggered by driving. I used to get triggered when 12 years ago, I used to get triggered by speaking in Ivrit, okay? Let's say there's a certain family member that they trigger your anxiety. What is it about that family member that triggers your anxiety?
That's something
It's
to
the,
think about also, because like knowing
yes,
what about this one person, and then sometimes you meet a new person and like, whoa, there was somebody
yeah,
actually in our move here that
yeah.
I only had a couple of phone conversations with, but I had a strong reaction to her, and I quickly realized that she reminded me of somebody that I know better that I tends to trigger me.
There you go.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like it's really important. What is it about, like, you know, like that smell, that sound, the, you know, specific health issue or a certain place or whatever it is? What is it about that that is so triggering for you? That is the number one, is to know what your triggers are, because the more clarity you have, the further your self-awareness would be, and the more you're going to be able to help yourself to decide what is the next step you're able to take.
Fabulous.
So that is the first way to um, that is the first way that you can prevent from being triggered from anxiety. Okay. Number two is, oh, look at me. At least I you know what, froze with my eyes half opened.
Happy
Okay.
That's
Okay, the
okay.
second one is really important, is setting boundaries. This is I can't like stress this to so many people, setting boundaries. Now the thing with setting boundaries is it's very different for different people.
Mhm.
And it's a very, very broad topic. So I'm only going to pick one small area that I've noticed is a massive issue for a lot of people, and that is the magical word of no. Okay, so let's say somebody invited you to something, or somebody asked you for a favor, or let's say there's a family member that's flying in and they're like, oh, can we stay with you for 6 weeks, you know? And this is the person that triggers your anxiety, you know, or list any other type of request you could potentially get. Now, before you say yes to that request, okay, ask yourself, is this what you really want to be doing? Okay, is this saying yes, is it going to either contribute or trigger any anxiety in me? And whatever that answer is, that is going to become your reality. Now, you need to make sure that your answer reflects the reality that you need, not just want, but needs.
Okay.
Okay,
You talk
as
about
somebody who has
yeah,
the different, sorry, what was your question?
the reality you want, the reality you need.
Okay, so I'm going to define needs
Yeah.
and wants are not the same. Okay, a need is something that is basic. We need food, we need shelter, we need clothes. Okay, we need to say no. Okay, a want is something else. Okay, I want another top, I want another pair of shoes. Okay, I want to have another cup of coffee. All right. First thing in the morning, I need a cup of coffee.
Every time I've spoken to you, you're drinking coffee.
Yes.
I think maybe for you it counts as
So there's a massive difference between need and wanting. So whatever you answer, make sure that that reality, it reflects that need, not the want, but the need. Okay. So if that person that asks to stay with you after they've flown in, if they are a potential anxiety trigger or contributes to anxiety, then think, what do I need for myself?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a really big one, just remember that when you're saying yes to something that you do not want to be doing, you're ultimately saying no to something that you do want to be doing.
It's huge. This is huge.
Yes.
Because you filled that space.
Remember
And that
that.
space is no longer available for the other thing that you might
You're
have.
putting your energy
Yeah.
into something that you do not want to be doing.
Yeah.
And what is it costing you to say yes?
That's huge.
Even if you're putting your energy into that, what is it costing you? What is it taking away from your life? And especially if you're a parent of an autistic child,
Or an adult on the spectrum.
or an adult on the spectrum, yes. There
Set
you go.
boundaries. Yeah.
Setting boundaries. Okay.
And to recognize, I'm going to just shift for a
Please.
minute to
Yes.
the group that we're speaking with,
Mm.
to recognize that your situation is different, and that's okay. And that you might need, it might be that like your sister or your sister-in-law can XYZ that you might like to be able to do, but your needs are different. Your needs are different, and that's okay.
And
Maybe,
your needs come above somebody else's wants
and expectations.
and expectations. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Like to say,
It's not your job to live up to somebody else's expectations. That's not your job.
right, your first job is to take care of yourself and
Yes.
your child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And that's
Definitely.
okay. It doesn't make you a bad person.
Not only is it okay, it must be like that.
It's
Not should be, it must be.
necessary.
Like,
And it
that
doesn't
is the right way.
it doesn't
Yeah.
make you less than the sister-in-law or the neighbor or that other woman
Yes.
in church or synagogue or mosque or whatever. Like, it's
Yes.
okay. like
It's more than okay. It's the right thing to do.
right.
No one's going to put you first. You need to put you first.
Have to set that.
No one is going to give you your needs the way that you will give yourself your needs.
Holly, I want to do a happy dance for what you're saying.
I want to do like the Chanda dance. I was watching Friends last night, you know.
My daughter has the best happy dance, but I think okay. Well, that's
Okay,
straight to
number
the next.
3.
Yes, go
Huh?
ahead.
Oh, so I was going to go on to the next one. Number 3, okay? Number 3 is looking after your basic needs, not wants, your basic needs. And I'm not even going to call this self-care. I don't call this self-care. I
'Cause it's
call
deeper than
this
that.
basic needs,
Right.
okay? Self-care is a whole different topic, okay? Self-care is not taking a shower and brushing your teeth. That's not self-care. That is a basic need, okay?
Right.
Okay, this is the most important point, and it is non-optional, okay? It is very, very difficult to function if you have not slept well, if you've
Right.
not eaten well, okay? Lack of sleep and proper nutrition will, okay, not maybe, it will affect your mood and therefore your emotional health and anxiety.
Yeah.
It will,
Yeah.
okay? Um, like imagine a child having 5 hours sleep, okay? What are they going to be like the next day? What are they going to be like the next day? And but how can you expect you to function on 3 hour, 4 hours of
Right.
sleep, you know?
This,
Um,
I just want to jump in real quick. This is so often,
yes.
like when people come to me, they're like, okay, I found you, let's fix it. And then we're seeing like
But
difficulties
you're not broken.
that also, that also,
Yes.
but a lot, but like before, but people want to like address what they've come to address right away.
Yes.
And have, I know in America, especially like in the 90s and early 2000s, like when I was in my younger adulthood, there was this saying, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And that showed sort of like the strength and resilience and everything.
Yes, I've heard that.
And I don't know if in England they also, but
I've heard it. I don't
Israel
like it.
seems to
You
be a
sleep when you're
big,
dead.
right. In
You can
Israel,
also sleep now. Sleep now as well. Go to bed.
well, the other thing is it's seen as this like the strength and this resistance and this resilience and everything. And I think it becomes even more like I'll sleep with parents especially that I speak to. I'll sleep when it's better without realizing I'll take care of myself once this is taken care of. Without realizing that the not
So
sleeping,
it's the other way around.
yes, that you have to,
If you when you go to sleep and you eat proper nutrition,
you're
other
ready
things in
to
your
go.
life,
Yeah,
yeah, you'll show up, and other areas of your life, the other issues of your life will be resolved much, much faster.
yeah.
Which actually, I want to actually just a few things I want to point out on this. Here's a little known fact. Did you know that dehydration, not drinking enough water, dehydration actually mimics depression?
Ooh, talk about that.
Yeah. Vitamin D deficiency can also cause depression and anxiety. And I want to say this as an anxiety coach. A few months ago, I was feeling, I would, I would actually say depressed. I was feeling depressed, and I cancelled out everything else. I was eating, sleeping, all that thing, and I couldn't figure out what. And I was exercising the whole thing, and I couldn't figure out why. What is going on? Suddenly, vitamin D deficiency.
Wow.
Okay,
And I'm
so
for this variant,
get
the people.
your blood work done. Get your blood work done. This is not an option. Get your blood work done. Okay. Now I understand like sometimes sleeping a whole 8 hours through like sleeping straight 8 hours at night. It's not always an option for some people. Okay. I have young children. I have a 3-year-old. He still wakes up in the middle of the night. Okay. Like these things happen. They do. Okay. So get a nap in during the day, power nap during the day. Okay, less than 20 minutes. Do it less than 20 minutes because after 20 minutes, you actually fall into a deeper state of sleep. 10 minutes, 10 minutes on the clock. I do that in my clothes. Go into my bed, put my phone on flight mode. I do it, yes, because then I can't function. I can't show up for I can't show up for my family, for my kids, for anyone if I'm not taking care of myself. You can't. If you want to show up for your kids, you need to first show up for yourself.
Yeah. And,
Okay,
and,
that's
and the work that I see a lot
yeah.
is like people like they're talking about meltdowns and like not making progress with different areas of growth and learning. But we need fuel for those things. Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
We need fuel for those
yeah,
things. Like
yeah,
sleep is a physical need. Our brains need it to learn and grow.
yes.
And all of the
You'll
things.
sleep when you're dead. If you don't sleep, guess what's going to happen? If you don't eat,
Absolutely.
guess what's going to happen? I'm not going to finish that sentence, but
Right. No.
like it
No, but
happens. There's a
yeah.
reason for it.
And,
Okay.
and it just like lowers your quality of life. Like
drastically. Yeah.
It's worthwhile to like cut things out, risk even saying like therapies and things out for a while until you can just get all of the basic needs taken.
Just think, what is your anxiety trigger? Go back to number one. What's an anxiety trigger? Do you know how much triggers and everything can be prevented just by having your basic needs of eating proper nutrition and sleeping done first? Okay. I just want to say on this specific point, okay. I know some people like it, it's very difficult to make a whole 180 degrees change overnight. Okay. I really want to address this. It's very nice me sitting here and saying, oh, you've got to sleep and you've got to eat well and you've got to drink and but for somebody who's on the other end of, I want to say almost the spectrum, I'm talking about the health spectrum. Okay, on the other end, no pun intended.
That's what I'm talking
about. On the other end, okay, sometimes it's very difficult to make that 180 degrees change. Okay, so this is what I'm going to suggest. Okay, start with one small thing, and I honestly suggest is starting with water.
Yes,
that's mine. Start with water. That's what I suggest. Go out, buy yourself a beautiful, nice bottle, not boring blue. Not boring blue. This was for my husband's office, to be precise. Buy yourself a bottle, something that's really nice, something that's really pretty, and something that speaks to you. Okay, and carry it around with you like it is your oxygen tank. Okay, I have a bottle of water in my car. I have one by my bed. I have one by my desk. Okay. Carry it everywhere. There's apps on your phone that you can put something about flower growing. I don't know. I know there's apps to make sure that you're drinking enough water.
Oh, cute.
Alarms on your phone. Start with at least something. And if you're going to start with something, start with drinking water. Okay. And if you're still struggling with that, I'm going to ask you, what is it costing you not to drink water? What is it costing your life? What is the difference? Notice the difference when you drink enough water and you're not drinking enough water. Right. Okay.
Mental function.
And I'm going to continue. And if you're still struggling with it, I'm going to ask you, who are your kids' role model? Who are your kids learning from?
Wow.
Okay.
That was a life changer.
Who are your kids learning from? If this was your kids, what would you say?
Right.
No, I was actually just going to sum up. Okay, the 3 ways to prevent yourself from being triggered from anxiety is number 1 is know your triggers. That's the most important thing. What are the things that trigger you? Number 2, setting boundaries. And I spoke about the magical word of no. Remember, when you're saying yes to something that you don't want to be doing, you're going to be saying no to something that you do want. And number 3, you have to look after your basic needs, not your wants, not your self-care, none of that. Your basic needs. Okay. And I actually gave the example of at least drink enough water. Start with at least that. If you're struggling to do anything, don't do it all overnight, but start with something small until that becomes a habit. Those are my 3 points.
Fabulous.
How to prevent being triggered.